This is end game. We'll be okay as long as nothing goes wrong.
All right. What do you want me to do? You've already done it. What? It's a drink. Don't fight it. What are you doing? Just give it up or they're gonna hurt you.
Hello, Mr. Garibaldi. Now, tell me what you know. All of it.
The captain once told me, the person is expendable, the job is not. We keep going.
Garibaldi's got Sheridan in his trap, but who's really in control?
This is much, much bigger than you suspect.
Walter Koenig is back on an all-new Babylon 5.
You have transmissions holding.
Patch incoming signal. Full audio and video decode.
Purple files accessed.
What you are about to see has never been shown to anyone outside the Grey Council.
Welcome back, everybody, to Gray 17, a Babylon 5 podcast, part of the Front Row Network and NPR Illinois Community Voices. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, boy, did you pick an interesting podcast to jump into. But we are a group of Babylon 5 fans that are divided amongst some longtime fans who have watched the show way too many times, and some of our friends who we conned into watching it for the very first time with us week by week to get their first impressions and thoughts. For those of you that have been around for a while, why? And welcome back to another episode of Gray 17, where this week we're going to talk about the face of the enemy. I'm Blake, and with me is
Emily,
Kevin,
Justin,
Jessi,
and Mike.
And I believe, Emily, you have a synopsis for us.
Yes, I do. After telling Garibaldi about his true plans, Edgar's meets his end and Lise goes missing. Bester removes the mental block, allowing Garibaldi to remember what happened to him since his encounter with the Shadow Vessel, and Clark gets his wish with Sheridan getting captured.
So speaking of wishes, before we jump into our first impressions, Emily, last week you kind of said you wanted Sheridan to get his ass kicked. So you kind of got that this week in a way. It wasn't with Garibaldi. He sort of sat in the corner. But you almost got what you wanted.
Almost.
Half credit.
Half credit. And I will say that was actually a really cool bar fight scene. So, and the music wasn't complete shit. Last time we had bar music, it was kind of questionable. But no, that was actually a really interesting scene they had going on there.
And I'm sure we will get into some of the production with that. So let's go ahead and jump into our first impressions. And let's start with Jessi.
Holy fucking shit. This shit was fucking nuts. And I'm going to tell you, I enjoyed every second of it. It's one of those episodes that went by way faster than normal. Like, sometimes I get to about, 20, 25 minutes and I'm like, what are we doing here? We could have ended this, 15 minutes ago. But this one was really, really good. It was amazing to see what had happened to Garibaldi after we literally just talked about how disgusted I was with him and how I was tired of trying to stick up for him as the person that he was before, and now him just being a total jackass. Kind of nice to see what actually happened and then it wasn't actually him. And turns out Lisa's not a money hungry, terrible woman. She didn't know anything about anything. And I found it funny that even with all of the altering that Garibaldi had, he still had enough love for her to tell her to get out. So it was a good time. I enjoyed the whole thing.
Yeah, I know what you mean about some of those episodes, Jessi. I said this in our group chat last week about the episode, but it was kind of like a 45-minute meeting that really could have been an email. That was my summary for last week's episode. So how about we jump over to Justin, first impressions?
Yeah, man. This episode had more spider webs than Dracula's butthole, to be honest with you.
I'm sorry, what was that phrase?
This episode had more spider webs than Dracula's butthole.
Oh, okay. Well, alrighty then.
Well, and there's our butthole reference of the week for those playing the at-home drinking game.
Well, we
Yeah.
didn't have one last week, so
Like with all the conspiracies that are going on, you got you got Edgar's and the telepaths, you got Garibaldi and Edgar's, you got Franklin and the telepaths. All sorts of shit's getting weaved in at once, and a lot of shit's getting revealed. So it was pretty epic. I mean, thankfully, Delenn finally shows up after the world's longest trip from Mimbar. So I was glad to see her back. And then Lita on Mars was actually very interesting. I kind of liked that little backstory bit about her. The one question I had about the Bloodhound gangs is, do they actually do it like they do on Discovery Channel? Was I the only person who immediately thought about that? And we just discussed this in the last episode, and we just saw it in all of its glory here with Bester, how Bester's only out for Bester's best interest. And like we spent a little bit of time on that last episode, and then just to see it play out exactly like that here was kind of a really cool way to kind of wrap up that whole bit of storyline with Garibaldi. It took a little bit of time, but I was glad to see that was finally proven right with how Garibaldi disappeared from Babylon 5 during the Zaha Doom episode. But overall, fantastic job on this one.
And I'm hoping when we get into the discussion later, Justin, I know you are also a World War II history buff, so I'm hoping you'll have some commentary later about some of the analogies from this episode.
I'll do my best.
And Emily, your first impressions.
Well, I didn't hate it because it was an awesome episode. And yeah, I can't say I felt great about the whole bar fight scene with Sheridan getting his ass kicked, but I can't say I was mad about it. I've apparently been angry at Sheridan for quite a while now. And I felt so bad for Garibaldi. I mean, seriously, like the shadows were like, oh, let's see if we can manipulate him. And then Buster's like, you know what? Actually, I'm going to take over and manipulate him instead. And then Edgar's is all like, hey, I can also manipulate him. So he's just kind of been like run through the ringer, and now he has no safe place to go because ISN just blasted his face and was like, hey, look who turned Sheridan in. And Ivanova's like, he shows up, shoot him on the spot. I don't give a shit, kill him. So I'm really fascinated to see what will happen to him going forward, because right now he's in a really bad position.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if he'll be able to work his way out of it.
Let's jump over now to our first ones for their first impressions. Mike.
Yeah, this is a genuinely enthralling episode. It's really probably from start to finish one of the best paced, I think. It really kept you kind of at the edge of your seat the whole time. This is another one that has really won me over as far as keeping my interest with the whole Earth Civil War storyline. Everything about it, the production value was great, the direction was great, the acting was great. You got a lot of nice depth. We'll talk about it more, but I agree that the scene with Lita was not necessarily relevant to the plot of the episode, but was still like a really cool moment and probably some of the best material that character has had to play with in the series to date, maybe in the series ever, period. But all in all, it was a great one.
And Kevin.
Huge fan of this episode, which shouldn't be a surprise because it's directed by Michael Vehar, and I really liked the strobes and stills effect, which I'm sure we'll talk about. It was very cool how they did that in 3 separate places in the episode. Great acting from Jerry Doyle in this one in particular, I thought. Some good Boxleitner stuff with the bar scene especially. Good intensity from Ivanova in this one. Very enthralling episode for sure. Really like this one.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's, as you pointed out, Kevin, a credit to the director on this one being Mike Vehar. He's directed some of the best episodes in the series. And this one, even JMS commented on that this one was a little bit of an experimental direction in terms of trying new things and visual techniques. And that fight scene, the scene on the Mars shuttle thing, all kind of speak to that. But also Jerry Doyle. I mean, we mentioned it a little bit before, but just the fact he's sitting there on that tram, not speaking and just staring, but his expressions and just the look in his eyes says so much as he's sitting there silently, even when Lisa's talking and then he just tells her to leave. Then with Bester sitting across from him, that was just, to me, a phenomenally acted scene with just 2 actors in a confined space. It really kind of reminded me, there's a episode, Star Trek Enterprise, that has 2 characters kind of stuck in a shuttle pod. And it's that same kind of, you put 2 characters in that confined space and just let them do their thing. And it turns out really well when you do it right. And this for me was really, really done well. So I think this is a great one, particularly after last week, which I think we all kind of agree is a much slower episode. So let's go ahead and jump into our discussion. Kevin.
So to piggyback off of what you were saying just now, Blake, I think it's really cool to know that first off, they didn't script Garibaldi's reaction once he is able to get out of his brainwashed trance. It just said Garibaldi reacts. And so they kind of left it to Jerry Doyle to decide how he was going to do that. And so it was his idea to slam his head against the wall and have kind of the yell, and his facial expressions, of course. And, they had a couple of guys in that set of the tram, crammed in there with Walter Koenig and then just Jerry Doyle at the end, and they couldn't see or talk to each other, so they had to count and do some other things. But the strobe effect with the stills was used in this scene, and I thought it was a really cool visual effect how they did that. It's a cool practical effect without having any sort of computer enhancement or anything, and they didn't use freeze frames. They used a still photographer.
David Foster was the photographer. He did the promotional shots actually that they sent out to the TV stations.
Yeah.
So that's who they had doing the still photography that they cut in.
Yeah, this, and they use that 3 places in the episode. They use it for the crime scene at the end. They use it here, and they used it for the bar scene as they're trying to do the effect of tranquilizer on Sheridan. So very cool way they did this.
Mike.
Yeah, just to make a remark about the general style of the episode. You guys talked a lot about the visual style being really cool and kind of dynamic with that kind of trademark Michael Vehar experimentalism. You've got the different unusual shots, different angles, a lot of things shot almost up from the floor or from the window back into the bar and that kind of stuff. The thing that really struck me with this episode was that during that bar scene was the song. The fact that it was kind of this dark environment, this action sequence with a lot of rapid cutting, and then this kind of rock and roll melodic song, which I really meant to try to go look up what that was just because I'm curious.
It's a good song.
It was a decent song, and it wasn't something that I had ever heard of before. And I think that's kind of interesting because what it made me think of was, wow, this feels really contemporary. I remember not that long ago, there was kind of a time frame where a lot of the shows that I liked watching, like I want to say it was a time frame when there was like Stargate Universe and Being Human and some of those other ones where you saw this kind of repeated pattern of a really dramatic action sequence kind of slowed down and interweaved with a song that wasn't, your AC/DC pop rock chart topper thing. It was like something that you were meant to not be familiar with, something that was meant to be a bit on the edgy side. And so like just overall it gave me the feeling that like, wow, this feels much more contemporary than it was.
Well, and you mentioned the song, Mike, and that's the one thing is it's not actually a song that was out there. The composer for the series, Christopher Franke, did all of the music. So it's one he put together. And this is one of the episodes. They did a series of soundtrack discs for different episodes, and they released them. This is one of the episodes that they released a soundtrack disc for that has all of the music that he wrote for this episode on it. It's available on Amazon. I don't think they have them on Apple Music, though, but it is available, I believe, on Amazon.
Yeah, well, kudos to them, because as somebody else already said, some of the last bar music scene we got was somewhat cringy. And it fooled me. It fooled me into thinking that this was like a real song from a produced album by a real artist. Not to say that the guy that wrote it and recorded it obviously had talent, so he's a real artist.
The cool thing is they brought it in on tape and they played it while they filmed the scene. So they actually had it on while they were doing the filming on set so that Boxleitner in particular could hear it.
Justin.
I just want to jump in with a hot take because from hearing everybody's descriptions, I think I'm the only one, to be honest. I didn't really care for this bar fight scene at all. And I think part of it has to do with, I guess I'm just getting really tired of all the messianic shit surrounding Sheridan. Like at the beginning of the episode, you had the reference that Garibaldi makes about, well, the last guy got 30 pieces of silver. And then to me, this whole bar scene just felt like the Garden of Gethsemane or whatever it's called. I don't know, to me, it just kind of, the continuing thing with this messianic trope around Sheridan is really getting tiring for me. So I guess it kind of took away from, now I get hearing everybody talk, I get kind of the cool, why people liked it. Thought the kind of the cool aspect was just, as Sheridan was getting his ass kicked, Garibaldi's just sitting there watching it, thing like that, and kind of the play of light and shadow and all that stuff. But it took away the enjoyment of that scene because I'm like, okay, here we go, here's another Christ comparison. That was just my hot take on it. Like, I didn't really care for that whole scene at all.
Well, I think it's interesting you bring up Gethsemane. This whole series, there's been foreshadowing and everything throughout, and we had that episode a while back, passing through Gethsemane, that had brother Edward and brother Theo, and the conversation was, knowing it was a trap, would I have been able to go?
Yeah.
And that was a conversation that the monk had with the Sheridan. And then we now get this moment where Sheridan had to have had in the back of his mind that this could have been a trap. And the question is, do you still go?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to change your mind, Justin. I just want to point out that, that one of the main reasons they filmed it that way was to be able to show Garibaldi's reaction during a lot of that. That's to show the level to which he had kind of disconnected from the man that he is or was before this all happened. And then, as soon as you realize in the episode what is truly behind it, it makes it all the more heartbreaking. But I'm a huge fan of that reference at the beginning of the episode about the 30 pieces of silver, not for the messianic reference necessarily, but because he understood how much of a betrayal it was. And it just shows you the level to which Garibaldi had been messed with, that he was willing to do that at all. And Jerry Doyle was a huge fan of that line too, because he said, as an actor, I barely had to do anything. I just had to deliver the line, and the line did the acting for me.
Yeah, and I'm not harping on the any of the technical aspects or anything like that. It was just, to me, and you just kind of fit in that theme with it, just kind of detracted from it for me. I get, yeah, all the technical aspects are cool, and the way they shot it was cool. It's just the fact that it was even there, and just I don't know, just the way it all came down, it was just eh. But I know everybody's going to have their own opinion on it, and
absolutely,
tis what it is.
I'll even agree that for all the technical aspects and things that I liked about it, it felt like it went on a bit long. There were times when I was questioning what was even happening.
It's interesting because JMS, that got pointed out to him too. And I see, Emily, you're wanting to jump in, and I'll cut to you in just a second. JMS commented on the length of the fight scene. For those that have had the ability to read his biography, he actually got jumped. He was mugged in Los Angeles, and he was talking about the length of the fight scene. And he said there's this TV cliche that fights are over in a second, but ask anyone who's ever been in a real knockdown, drag-out fight. It goes on a heck of a lot longer than showed here. When I got mugged, it went on for at least 10 minutes. So that was JMS's comment on the length of the fight scene, was they didn't want to use that cliche of a 30-second one punch and over type fight.
Or what may have been a very quick fight can feel like an eternity when you're in it.
Yes.
Yeah, I get it.
Emily.
Aside from the technical aspects, I think one of the things I appreciate about the scene is Garibaldi puts a tranquilizer on him, and he's trying to fight back. And he's been altered somehow by Lorien, but we don't know how much that could impact him being tranquilized. So as he's like trying to fight the tranquilizer, I was thinking, I'm like, don't tell me this is going to be like some weird bullshit where it's not going to affect him and he's going to get out of this. Because he went to Zaha Doom, he came back. We've seen these, he gets in the shit situation and he gets out of it. And now he's in a real shit situation.
Mm-hmm.
And
he doesn't have Fast and Furious armor.
So for like a second or two, I was watching him like, is he actually going to somehow escape this situation? And I was actually happy to see that. No, he doesn't. Because we've seen, to me, like, I've already seen it. I don't want to see it again. I want to see like something different. And also, I'm still angry at him. So.
Right, so there's a lot to dive into at this episode. We've got Edgar's and his conspiracy and plan for telepaths. We've got Sheridan and now Ivanova's continued march towards Earth. And we also have Franklin back on Mars with number one, who was not exactly thrilled to see him. So where do we want to start first, folks?
I was going to bring up Edgar's.
Well, Emily, go right ahead.
When Edgar's is explaining his entire plan to Garibaldi, there was like a couple seconds where it almost seems like he was getting choked up about what the plan's actually going to do. I was trying to figure out, I'm like, is that he's just struggling to swallow because he's taking a drink, or is there actually a part of him that almost feels bad because he knows what he's doing is unethical, it is wrong, it is harmful, it is cruel, it is attempting genocide of sorts. And then when we know Lise goes missing and her husband had run off with their child, I was like, does she have some like latent telepathic skills like Ivanova does that he knows about and he knows she's at risk?
Justin.
I kind of had the same thoughts that you did, Emily, because like when he was sitting there, especially towards the end,
yes,
where it looked like he was getting kind of emotional, and you can kind of maybe question if having this moment of, I know what I'm doing is horrible, but he doesn't feel like he has any other choice. Yeah, you can build a little bit of sympathy for that, but genocide's still genocide, man. Like, regardless of your intentions, regardless of who you think you're saving, you're willing to wipe out a potentially entire group of people. And yeah, it's nice that you have a little bit of guilt surrounding that, but at the same time, I don't feel any kind of sympathy for him whatsoever.
It just made me wonder if there's someone he actually cares about that's going to be harmed by what he's doing.
Oh, I'm sure there's probably a lot of people he knows that aren't going to survive this. But at the same time, it's that whole you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs type mentality.
Yeah.
That to him justifies it. He knows he's going to hurt a lot of people, because he even said he started his companies to help people, not hurt people. He never wanted to hurt people. But to him, this is just, he doesn't see, in his own mind, he doesn't see any other path forward, but it still doesn't excuse anything. He's still a monster. But
Justin, did you pick up on how he even referred to it as the telepath problem?
It had very Final Solution-esque feelings to it, and I think that's what caught him, because that's when he started to break down, because he knew what he was doing, but he was still going to go through with it. And to me, kind of watching that entire scene, there was another very popular show on during that same time frame that dealt with a lot of the same issues, and it was the X-Men animated series. That whole conversation, especially when Wade's involved and talking about Homo superior versus Homo sapien, like exact same words, exact same arguments used in this scene. That's kind of the whole plot of X-Men. And it was like, okay, so is Bester Magneto? So like, it was kind of very interesting to kind of see that whole thing played out. And I was wondering if there's any kind of like feedback or any discussion on the Usenets or anything about the comparisons of how similar that whole scene was to the same kind of things that are dealt with in the X-Men series, which was at its peak of its popularity by the time that this show aired.
There wasn't anything directly in the Usenets, but given the role that JMS played in comic writing. And I don't recall off the top of my head if X-Men was ever one he worked on. I know he worked on Spider-Man and a few others, but I don't think he ever did X-Men. But he was definitely in that universe.
Right.
Definitely had that basis.
Because he was writing for Marvel at the time, I believe. So
yeah, I mean, I think if I remember correctly, a lot of his experience into the realm of animation was probably earlier 80s, and then he'd moved on to comics. But there's no way he wasn't though.
Right.
I mean, X-Men.
Well, I'm not saying he's trying to rip anybody off.
He's a comic book nerd at his core.
Yeah, it was just the similarities were fascinating, because the exact same argument. And it's the exact same argument that we've had in any time, regardless of when you discuss if you hear discussions about the future of the human race, and when you hear discussions in the past about Wade was perfectly right about how Homo sapiens wiped out the Neanderthals and stuff like that. Like his discussion about human evolution isn't wrong. It was just very interesting about how that whole kind of came about. And now you have the superior group of humanity. Well, then what's the next Darwinian step? Eliminate the ones below. And they're acting almost like, they're going on the offensive. They're taking these steps, but they're treating it like an act of defense. And it's just really, like, that whole discussion was just a really fascinating scene. And then it's Jesus, Garibaldi, like, it was like, then he pops out his tooth, and it's like the whole thing was like an undercover op the whole time. And it's like, Jesus, I didn't see that coming. I was like sat there, I started screaming at my TV, like, I did not see that part coming, about how it was all just a plant, just an undercover ruse.
Kevin.
I had the same thoughts you did, Justin, about the X-Men parallels, and I certainly agree with them. The only thing I will say in this sense is, unlike other horrible men in the past, Psychor definitely is a threat. Now, is this justified? No, absolutely not. But Psychor is a huge threat, so he's not 100% unjustified for seeing the threat and wanting to do something about it, but certainly his attempted genocide is an absolutely an unconscionable act. The only thought I had was, besides assuming, I hope, that he had enough quantity of the antidote on a regular schedule so that he could actually fulfill the plan that he had. My next thought is, so how are you going to unveil this 2-week antidote where it doesn't seem like you engineered it to make you a humongous target? Because if they have any inkling that you're behind the whole thing, I mean, you're going to be dead in 2 seconds. You said if they had any inkling of it up until this point, you would have been dead. So how are you going to go about bringing that to fruition, unless your entire goal really is to eliminate every single telepath, and that you have no intention whatsoever of temporarily curing them every 2 weeks?
Well, and I think some of that, they've already had the cover story in place, because how much have they talked about a virus that affects telepaths that they've been working on a cure for? They just left out the part that they made the virus to go with the cure.
Okay. So then he's more of he's seen as a hero because he's got a treatment, we'll say, for the virus that he's hoping no one ever figures out is from his company in the first place.
He's just got to hope people take the vaccine and don't think, that it puts radio signals into them or some other fun nonsense.
Yeah.
Mike.
Well, my microchip's doing just fine.
Hey, my cell reception's never been better since I got the vaccine. Mike.
Well, I guess Eggers' whole MO, though, really isn't necessarily about being a shadow conspirator, not having his name out there, but it is about being out of the public eye. Everybody knows who he is and what company he runs, but they don't know where to find him and they don't know what he looks like. So I guess to some extent, maybe that is his shield against reprisal, is my thing. To Kevin's point, I did want to segue real quick, just because we were talking about the animation a minute ago, and I'm just browsing IMDb, and I thought something was kind of funny. I don't know if we've really talked about the actor who plays Eggers on any previous episodes yet, have we?
We've discussed that he's Alfred.
Yeah, okay.
We talked about him a little bit last week.
Okay, fair enough. We don't need to beat it to death, but I just thought it was kind of funny. I'm like, oh, he is Alfred Pennyworth and the original Batman, and Dr. Octopus and Spider-Man. Like,
right. We didn't mention that.
Justin.
Well, just one thing I wanted to kind of mention to Kevin's point was, it's also it's not like they're going to crack the vial and then all of a sudden every single telepath's got the virus. It's airborne, so it's going to take a while to spread, right? And so by the time it starts to actually spread, and they have to know, like, what's the amount of people we're going to let die before we unveil this miracle cure. And then Blake also hit it on the head. They've already been talking about it, so it's not going to be like a big shock. Then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we've got a cure, hooray us. So that was all I was going to say about that.
So anything else on Mr. Edgars, or do we want to jump into talking about the reprogramming of Mr. Garibaldi? Let's go ahead and jump there. And as a starter, so after Bester starts explaining to him what happened, anyone catch who one of the other Psychops was played by in the scene where Bester's talking about erasing him?
Yes, sir. None other than Harlan Ellison himself.
Mm-hmm.
No kidding. Yeah. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, the older of the two, the gray-haired one, was Harlan Ellison.
Oh,
it's funny.
I'm familiar with his work. I'm not really familiar with his face as much.
What's funny is it didn't click to me either when I watched it. In fact, when I saw the guy, I was like, he looks and sounds really familiar, and I thought it was the older doctor, Dr. Bob from Scrubs, who we'd seen previously as an Earth Force captain. And I was like, did they seriously cast the same guy in two different roles? Like, it's not uncommon to cast the same actor in two different roles, even in this show. But I thought, wow, that's pretty bold to put them that close together and both without makeup. But then I looked it up. I'm like, holy shit, that was Harlan Ellison. That's
yeah, because him and JMS became friends. JMS met him when he was in college studying writing, and the two became friends. To the point, Straczynski became the administrator of the Harlan Ellison estate and all of the collected works and library of Ellison. So he actually brought Harlan in on B5 as a consultant at one point. I think he was credited in this one as conceptual consultant for Harlan Ellison.
Who would have thought two cranky old bastards with similar interests would be friends?
Well, it's funny. There's a story in JMS's book about JMS is very socially awkward. He does not do socializing well. And there was a thing where Harlan Ellison basically told him, I like you, but goddamn, I hate having you at my table. So surely some of you have to have thoughts on Mr. Garibaldi. Oh, Justin, I see you ready to go.
Yeah, it's honestly the whole thing was a lot more like the whole explanation was because when like Bester walks in and sits down, I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. This is going to be like when the supervillain in Bond movie explains his entire plan. I'm like, okay, here we go. This is going to be fun. It was actually a lot more in depth than I thought it was going to be. He went through like a step-by-step detail on how you brainwash a human. The fact that like the Shadows captured him because that whole kind of plan that they had about how the Shadows were going to capture Garibaldi, turn because they were just afraid of him as they were of Sheridan, turn him into their side, and then just off Delenn and Ivanova. The only part about the whole thing that I don't really get is, well, Bester said he was able to intervene, but he didn't really go into detail about how he was able to intervene or be like, oh, you know what? No, we know you have your plan, Shadows, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to take it from here. And so then at that point, it made perfect sense what Bester wanted to do, being like, he's already a paranoid asshole. Mm-hmm. We're just going to make him more of a paranoid asshole and just set him loose and have to correct him a little bit, just kind of point him in the right direction and go. And it was actually pretty fascinating on how Bester kind of put out this whole plan into motion. And then the fact that he had Garibaldi so brainwashed that he was frozen in place the entire time Bester was there because Nichols the nuts. Bester was not going to put himself in a position where Garibaldi would be able to get his hands on him. So that was another brilliant stroke by Bester.
Emily.
Yeah, I found Bester's explanation kind of fascinating, especially when he was explaining that we didn't really do a whole lot overall. We just took his natural personality and heightened it. So he's more suspicious, more likely to follow leads. Like, I was like, wow, that didn't take as much work probably as they thought they were going to have to do.
And naturally rebellious against authority.
And that by doing that, it like Buster's plan overall worked out, but still didn't go how he expected it to go because Garibaldi quit. And Buster was like, I didn't see that one coming, but it worked out. Like, man, you guys kind of got lucky there. It would have been interesting to know how they would have manipulated things differently had Garibaldi not quit and not been contacted by Edgar's to be in the position to get the information from Edgar's that Bester can then use. Because I'm assuming it was Psycor that offed him and Wade.
My guess is that he wasn't the only asset. I mean, he even kind of makes sense of that. Wasn't an all or nothing prospect where if it hadn't worked out that they would get absolutely nothing. But yeah, it is an interesting spider web that
worked out surprisingly well.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the way they did it too, with just taking those natural things that they said, his conspiratorial nature, his rebellious streak, his opposition to authority figures, and heightening those. They did a complete new personality. Think back to Talia. It was a night and day personality difference between the program Talia personality and the complete raging bitch that once that was turned off. Had they done a complete rewrite of Garibaldi, I think the others would have noticed it. And I think that even got alluded to in this, that keeping it and heightening what he was, everybody thought he was an asshole, but they're like, okay, this is just Garibaldi going like to the extreme of being Garibaldi. And didn't flag enough that anybody, I think Zach, the way they've played that, I think Zach had a sense that something was wrong, and you could tell that in some of Zach's interactions. But I think pretty much the rest of the staff was like, he's just being a fucking asshole.
Well, Zach even flat out confronted him at one point about it. What's wrong with you? What the hell's wrong with you? What's gotten into you? And Emily actually made me think of one of my favorite lines from Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. Madness is a lot like gravity. All it takes is a little push. And that's exactly what they did with him.
Jessi.
I find it interesting that they just cut him loose. Like when he was all done and he's like, I could kill you right now. And then he's like, but I'm just going to let you go and let you go back to who you were and let you return to everything being normal, except now it's not because you done fucked over all your friends and pissed everybody off. I guess the chaos that would ensue after cutting him loose would be interesting to Bester, but I also see the value in Bester just shooting him right there and being done with it. So it was surprising to me that, when he was talking about, I could just shoot you now, there's different options. I did not expect one of the options to be, okay, just I'm going to click my fingers and you're going to walk away and everything's going to be normal again. That was actually a surprise to me. I mean, a pleasant surprise. And Ivanova's reaction to him of shoot him on sight, I kind of giggled because I'm like, yeah, no, I mean, that's an appropriate response to somebody setting up one of his longtime confidants and friends. But it was definitely interesting.
Well, and we heard the comparison earlier where they mentioned the Bond villain doing the big exposition of their plan to 007. How many of them could have got away with it if they just would have fucking shot him to start with?
Yep.
But no, they just have to let him keep going. Emily.
I agree with Jessi. I found it fascinating that Bester was like, here's your memories, toodaloo.
Right.
Best of luck. It's like, peace out. Because yeah, I actually did think I actually expected Edgar's to take out Garibaldi after revealing the entire plan. I kind of figured that was in Edgar's timeline to at some point kill him because he knows everything. And one of the other things I was thinking about is when Bester just heightened Garibaldi's like natural inclinations to question things. And Garibaldi had already been on the outs with Sheridan before over the whole Morden incident. He was like, you're stepping over the line. I am done. I am quitting. You get your shit together and I'll come back. So then when he quit again, I think everyone was probably like, oh, he's done this once before. It's just Garibaldi being Garibaldi and he's just upset with Sheridan for whatever this time. And yeah, that was a brilliant move for them, for Bester to just be like, he's already naturally rebellious. Let's just dial it up a few notches. See what it does.
Justin.
To me, it actually made perfect sense that Bester would just let him go. Because Garibaldi was a pain in the ass to Bester for quite a few times. And I think to me, this is Bester's act of revenge. Right. He's like, I used you and I don't need you anymore. And I'm going to turn you loose on the universe and just revel in whatever bad things happen to you. Because you were a pain in my ass for so long and treated me like shit. So here you go. Here's your just desserts, Michael Garibaldi. Good luck. And right. I think it was definitely, it was an act of sweet revenge on Bester's part just to turn him loose, and because killing him would be too easy. This is an act of torture that he's committing on Garibaldi by just turning him loose.
You nailed it. It's not. It wasn't mercy. It was absolutely vindictiveness. And I mean, I don't remember if this scene came before or after Talia's little backstory diatribe about. I think it was after, and it would make total sense because Talia is explaining how, in her story they tracked down the murderer and killing him would have been too easy. Or sorry, damn it, you
Telepath 2.
Yeah, you planted that in my brain by accident. Lita's story about being a bloodhound and tracking down the murderer and how they didn't kill him because that would be too easy. Instead, they left them a tortured soul, and that's exactly what Bester just did to Garibaldi. So I think it makes total sense why he did that.
Yeah, and it's also the torture of you're going to try in vain to try and convince your friends that you didn't betray them.
And they're not going to believe you.
And they're not going to believe you, and that's going to be even more sweet revenge for Bester.
Because, to what Kevin said, they wouldn't even take his call. Ivanova's response was, I have nothing I want to say to him. Shoot the son of a bitch.
Shoot him, yeah.
Right. Well, I think that's exactly my first comment about, I can see why the chaos would benefit Bester, because he'll get real solid joy out of watching the consequences of his actions, but allowing somebody else to take the credit for all of the shit that happened. I can absolutely see why that would be the best option for him. But I honestly expected there to be other options. I don't know what they were, but there were two. And the second absolutely makes sense. It was just, I think it was surprising to me because I wasn't thinking along those lines of, oh yeah, no, this totally is Bester in a nutshell.
Justin.
Just kind of a speak on Jerry Doyle's acting during this kind of sequence of events, because when Lise came down and found him on the tram and he was just sitting there with that look on his face, just sitting there looking down, not even really responding to her, I thought maybe he was going to go and kill Edgars himself, because he just had that look on his face as someone who's thinking he's about to do something very bad. And it was just chilling just watching him just staring down, not responding, telling her to get out, go home. And I was like, oh, he about to go tear Edgars up. And he didn't even have to, because Psychor got there first. Doyle was fantastic in this episode. Probably one of my favorite acting jobs of this entire
He
entire
really
run.
was. He was phenomenal.
Mike?
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about this subject is that Bester and Psychor, they've done a full psychological workup on Garibaldi. They know Garibaldi better than Garibaldi knows. By the time they choose to use him as their instrument of destruction. And so the other thing that they know about him is that he's a man who's not led the most stable life and has a lot of demons in his closet. And we kind of see that's the final shot of Garibaldi, isn't it? Going to have a sip of alcohol, which we know has been his Achilles heel from previous episodes. So they can probably reasonably assume that he's going to, as Kevin said, go out and try to make amends in vain. He's going to torture himself over the things that he's done himself, and then he's going to self-destruct.
Anything else on Mr. Garibaldi?
I just feel really bad for him.
So I have a question. So after having seen at least to this point in this storyline, and I know there's been some trepidation about this particular storyline, how are your thoughts on overall arc up until this point?
Like the show in general?
No, I mean just this Garibaldi piece for this season. Like, do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you wish it had been shorter? Do you like how the length was? How are your thoughts on it? Because we talked about it a couple times where people really didn't like this storyline. Now that you've seen to some fruition, how do you feel about it?
I think it definitely makes sense now. And I mean, clearly it was well written and well acted out because it did exactly what I think they wanted it to do and like piss people off. This is a character that I thoroughly, deeply enjoyed up until he started to act like an asshole. And clearly that's what they were going for. They were going for a total rewrite of his character and who he was to the people that he was close with and friends with before, allies with before. And watching it be the explanation of why he's been acting like that, really, there was some closure there because you don't want to believe that I think I just said it when we recorded the last episode, is I'm tired. I'm getting Londo vibes, John and Londo vibes, where he continues to stick up for a character that he enjoys, but you can clearly see as an asshole. And so watching Garibaldi and how he has like morphed into this terrible fucking person that was so terrible that he's willing to like rat out one of his best friends, it was hard to watch. And I definitely think that they did exactly what they were going for, because I was starting to believe that that was just his permanent person, like his permanent character. So it's nice to see that it wasn't him, which we've been saying for a while, like he's been altered, there's something going on, but it's nice to, I guess, have the confirmation that he actually was altered.
Emily?
I'm with Jessi. It was nice to see that the increased suspicion, hostility, and everything was a result of interference by Shadow Psychor. And the interesting part about it, I still don't think he was wrong overall about Sheridan and no one questioning Sheridan when he came back. It is interesting how that played out, and I feel really bad for him because at this point I don't see a situation in which he won't be in danger permanently, because I don't know that anyone's really, because what he did was still so close to who he was, except the betrayal of telling Edgar's how to get Sheridan's dad. I'm not sure anyone will ever fully believe him that wasn't him wanting to do any of that, or even knowingly. Because Buster talked about his actual personality being locked out and trying to get out and couldn't. I feel bad for him, but overall, the explanation has worked.
Justin?
Overall, it's very satisfying. Like, you saw him when he got picked up earlier in the season, and like Jessi had made the comment exactly too, like we all knew that he was reprogrammed. We all knew he was not a willing participant in what was going on. But just to see kind of how it all gets wrapped up, and even though it's a very dirty bow, it's still a neat little bow on how it's all tied up and tied together. And now there's the vast cloudiness of what happens to Garibaldi from here. We kind of had an idea of where Garibaldi was going this season. Well, now we don't know. Anything can happen. So it's kind of opened up a whole new door of, what's going to happen with Garibaldi, and what is his life going to be like now that he can't go back to B5, he can't go to Earth, his whole life is ruined.
Yeah, I think the piece with David Sheridan and Garibaldi using that to the advantage of the plan might be the worst part of the whole thing, and is going to possibly have some lasting. And it's monstrous. It's absolutely monstrous. But to know that Garibaldi, the real Garibaldi, probably never would have done that, or certainly not to Sheridan. It's awful, for no question.
Jessi.
I don't know. Just something that Justin just said, that he can't go back to Earth. I think I disagree there. I think he can go back to Earth. And I think, especially since the ISN is, making him out to be this hero,
You're right.
Yeah,
I
I do
forgot
think
about
that he would have a place back on Earth if that's where he wanted to go, but I'll save that for my my predictions at the end.
I was wondering if he would be able to go back to Earth because he was at the crime scene where Edgar's was murdered and he touch things. So as they do their investigation, is he going to be linked to their murder? And not only is he going to be flagged as handing over Sheridan, he's also now going to be connected with the killing of 4 people?
No, and the thing is, they even said on the ISN broadcast, they don't want to pin that on Garibaldi. They mentioned that they suspected the Mars resistance.
Yeah.
That was in the ISN broadcast. They would get more value pinning it on the Mars resistance than they would Garibaldi, who they just hailed as a hero for turning in Sheridan.
Oh, they straight up swept that shit under the rug. Yeah.
Yeah, but if anyone connects him to it, and I feel like it still puts him in a precarious situation, because if anyone else gets a hold of that info that's not supporting Earth.
Oh, he's fucked with that crowd anyway. They wouldn't need it.
Yeah. It's just one more thing to add to his list.
They're going to shoot him before they ever get to that part. So speaking of the forces not supporting Earth, we do see the start of this episode has Sheridan's fleet is growing. He's been picking up more ships, including his old command, the Agamemnon.
I was so excited to see that.
I'm the only one that thought that was really suspicious when they just showed up and were like, "Hey, wait, guys."
A little bit.
I did for a
was
second.
Like, do we really implicitly trust these people just because they were your crew once? Doesn't mean they still like you.
And I guess they never really liked him because they even said he was a pain in the ass to deal with, but they were loyal to him.
Well, they weren't wrong there.
They decided to jump ship as soon as they could.
Well, and they even said, they had their doubts, but once the illegal orders started coming in, they kind of figured it out.
Yeah.
No, having the Aggie back in the fight is going to be fun to watch.
Any other thoughts on the amassing fleet? Then they also caught into why some of these ships aren't wanting to surrender. Caught in there was the whole discussion around if you surrender or you get captured, your crews are executed and replaced with Minbari, because it's still this whole anti-alien conversation, right? And Sheridan even said when he had Ivanova come in, because she asked, would you rather have Delenn come lead the fleet? And it's no, it needs to be human commanders.
And holy hell, like that tactic is old as war itself.
Yep.
Spreading propaganda about the actions of what your enemies do. We're seeing it right now between Russia and Ukraine.
One thing's for sure, I would not want to be on the receiving end of Ivanova in this particular mood of hers, because she's out for blood.
Yeah.
Not that I blame her.
When she gets pissed, something's going to go boom.
Yeah. She even said, boom today, boom tomorrow.
But just from the propaganda aspects of it, what is it, Captain Frank, who has thought, oh, you're just going to execute all of us like you have all the others. So that when Mackie starts talking, he was like shocked, like, Mackie, they told us you were dead. So just so everyone, how they wrapped all their little propaganda, momaganda, little goslings, and they put out their little story, and everybody, and it's how they explain everything is, oh, well, you're not hearing from these people anymore because they got captured and executed, not these ships are defecting. They spun it as, well, they're getting caught and executed, so that's why you don't see them around anymore, and that's why we've lost all these ships, and now they're all Minbari crews. Go fight the aliens. That may look like an Earth ship, but it's all aliens. It makes it easier to shoot at.
I'm going to jump in and just say that I did laugh at that, because in as much as it on the surface makes sense, it also seems like the most laughably easy thing to disprove. Such an extreme lie that like the other guy can just call you and be like, no, I'm not dead. And then you've just thrown like, oh, well, shit, maybe they're lying to me about other things too then.
Well, I'm sure their deep fakes in this century are probably very,
I was
very
going to
good.
say.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We have seen how well some lies persist regardless of reality.
Yeah.
I want to say that there are these things in sci-fi where, like, they show these super advanced technologies that seem super far-fetched, like, replicators in Star Trek or jump gates, and then there are other things that they show or don't show that are very real not that much later. And so, like, the fact that Babylon 5 and Trek and a lot of these other shows really never touch on things like deepfake technology is just kind of a funny omission to me, because it does seem like something that would just be an absolute nightmare to deal with. I mean, it probably is right now, but especially in a show like B5.
Yeah, ask the voters in New Hampshire how they feel about deep fake phone calls, robocall.
Yeah, they're a little miffed about those. Emily, you got something before we?
The whole Franklin and Lita situation, and how many of these telepaths in stasis did they bring in?
All of them.
How many are all of them? Did we ever get an official number? Because
37.
They said there were dozens.
Yeah.
And then he was like, there's a lot. And we still don't know what Lita's there to do them. Like, is it just her trying to manipulate all of them? What is happening? I need answers.
I also
And
have
does
questions
Franklin look even more gray than the last episode?
I kind of thought that too. It must have been a hell of a phone call with Sheridan when he got that bad news about his marching orders.
I'm like, it doesn't look bad or anything, but it just seems like this is a rapid change.
He did. He looked like he aged the way Obama did after his term in office. Like,
he is stressed the fuck out. I don't know what Sheridan told him, but I'm guessing it must be really bad. If his hair is graying that much in, like, I don't know, a week.
I did also have questions about how they brought a bunch of telepath sickles across the galaxy to deliver them to Mars in these big cryo tubes, when Marcus and Franklin had to sneak aboard a cargo ship and live in a hold for like 2 weeks. They
mentioned that
whatever.
Mars is otherwise occupied with Sheridan and all that jazz, that it's been easier to slip things in, but that still does make a lot.
Quite a big thing to slip in.
That's a pretty big hole, because even Garibaldi had to be slipped through the blockade.
Well, I'm sure where there's a will to slip something through a blockade, there is a way to do so.
Runners.
I say, look how well Prohibition worked in the United States.
It worked
phenomenally
fantastically. I don't know what you're talking about.
Kevin.
I just wanted to mention something about the episode title because I thought it was really interesting. JMS said that in the Atonement episode, Delenn talks about the most dangerous enemy being the one that you know nothing about. So JMS kind of flipped that on its head, and he says that in this episode it was more like the enemy was wearing a mask and you don't figure it out until it's too late. I thought that was really cool, because the episode title doesn't exactly, at least to me, it didn't scream out what exactly it was referring to, and I thought that was...
I mean, there's more than one enemy throughout all this. You can look at Edgar's as an enemy. You can look at Sheridan's eyes. I'm sure Garibaldi's the enemy for turning him in. In Garibaldi's eyes, now Bester is the enemy. Like, there are a lot of faces to enemies in this episode.
So I'm going to ask one specific question for our newbies, and you already touched on it a little bit. So Franklin and Lita show up with the popsicle telepaths. What is your prediction for what they're going to do with those?
I said it last episode of my prediction.
So Justin's already on the record.
Yeah, I'm already on the record. I'll just reiterate it in case you're just joining us for the very first time, like 4 years into this mess. I think that Sheridan's going to sacrifice them as like some kind of like telepathic hackers to fuck with Mars and Earth computers to help them win the war. We're going to have a conversation, if that happens, about whether or not John Sheridan is a war criminal.
Jessi.
Oh, but I don't think it's that. I'm not sure. I have zero idea, but like I said in the last episode, we were talking about that he's going to kill them all. And Scott said, wait, he's going to push Franklin to hurry up and find out a solution. So just in order to kill them all. And I said, well, yeah, that doesn't make any damn sense either. So I have no idea. I have no idea what they're doing with them. It's just like I had no idea what was going on with Garibaldi. I don't know what is happening today, but
putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
It's causing me some problems today. I didn't know what was going on with.
And Emily.
I'm still not sure what they plan to do with these frozen telepaths. Whatever it is, I don't think it'll be good for them in the long run. And I don't think Sheridan's going to end up looking good after he does whatever he does, because Franklin seemed upset by it. I'm just not sure how exactly they plan to utilize them. But I still have to question if there's hidden shadow ships somewhere, if they're hearing them.
That's a good one, too.
They left their minions behind. I wouldn't be surprised if they left some of their tech and their ships behind too for their little minions to utilize.
Okay, so we've got that one. So let's go ahead and jump into our full questions and predictions after this episode from our newbies. For those that are just joining this show for the first time, again, welcome, or you've made some interesting life choices to land you here this evening. But we give all of our newbies a chance to ask their questions and predictions. We then proceed to either gaslight them or completely mislead them, throw them off the show, and make fun of them in a segment we call Beyond the Rim that Jessi is probably going to personally kill each and every one of us for later. So let's go ahead and go to Jessi for her questions and predictions this week.
So I would like to know when we get to see Ivanova straight up thunder punch Garibaldi at some point. Need to see that. But really, what happens to Garibaldi next? Where does he go? I know we've talked about, can he go back to Earth? He can't go back to B5. My prediction is he does go back to B5. I would like to have this feel good ending, and this is where you guys are going to make fun of me because I know that that's not what is, but I would like to see him get back into B5, get back into the role of the lead security person, and get back into good graces with all the individuals that he's now spent the last season fucking over. I'm sure that is not easier said than done, and I'm out.
And Justin.
My one question is Garibaldi going to try and do something to save Sheridan? Because in my mind, that's the only way he could possibly even try to make up for his mistakes with this whole thing. Is that if he's the one that goes in there and comes up with the plan to rescue Sheridan, at some point, he's going to have to be saved. I mean, I really don't think this is where they say, okay, goodbye, Sheridan, on to the next captain. Mackie, what you got? Sheridan's going to be saved somehow. I just question whether or not it's going to be Garibaldi kind of leading the charge. Or Garibaldi just goes full-blown fucking Rambo. He just does it himself somehow. So that was my question. Prediction, kind of piggybacking off of what Jessi was saying. Even if he were to somehow go back to Babylon 5 and be quote-unquote forgiven, I don't see him going back into the security role. They may accept him back on the station, but things are never going to be the same. It's like with Londo. Nobody trusts him anymore. Nobody feels like they can turn their back on him. I think that's going to be what Garibaldi's going to have to live with, even though we now know it wasn't his fault. Maybe Lita will be able to kind of prove his point. Maybe Lita will have to be able to step in and help out. But I just don't see things going back to the way they were. And then I just can't wait to see the fleet pulling up on Earth with the White Star Fleet and the Agamemnon at the head. That's just going to be, I think, a very fun and satisfying scene to watch.
And Emily.
So I don't really have any predictions, but I do have loads of questions this go around. I still want to know why Edgar's almost seemed upset about his plan against the telepaths, because there did seem to be like that very brief moment near the end of his explanation where he seemed upset about it. And I kind of want to know if he was ever hurt by a telepath, and that's why he actually seems to have like this personal vendetta against them. Like, was a parent a telepath and he was manipulated by them? Like, what is it solely about money, or is there like some personal trauma and they're feeding into the greed as well? Where is Lise? Did she run off before Edgar's got killed? Was she there and captured? And if her husband left her and took their kid and she can't find them, was he part of Psychor? Because we know they've done that before. They like steal people's kids. What is Clark actually going to do with Sheridan now that Edgar's is dead? Because Edgar's was using Sheridan as a distraction. Is that going to impact Clark's plans with him at all? If Edgar's won't be there to interfere or do anything or even care? Is Delenn gonna leave B5 to go save Sheridan, or does she stay on B5 because who else is left? Does Lanier get B5? Who's gonna take over?
Veer.
Veer. That'd be Lanier and Veer taking over B5. You know what? I'd love to see it. So what does Garibaldi do now? What's his first action? Does he go try to save Lise? Does he try to find her? Or does he try to save Sheridan? Because he doesn't really have any friends at this point, so that won't really give him any help to create a plan to save Sheridan. So I'm wondering if his first goal will be to find her. And then if Lita joins Psychor again, how is she helping Franklin? Or did she leave Psychor again and now she's like gone rogue? How is this working out? Is Sheridan's father physically safe? Is he getting his medication that he needs to keep him alive? Are they actually feeding him and not torturing him? Is he obviously captured but not otherwise severely harmed?
This has been Gray 17, a Babylon 5 podcast. This is again the section where we are going to kick all of these newbies out, and Mike, Kevin, and I are going to discuss all of their questions and predictions, who's right, who's wrong, and who doesn't have a clue. Again, I have been Blake, and with me has been
Emily,
Kevin,
Dustin,
Jessi,
And Mike.
And join us back next week where we will be discussing intersections in real time.
Thank you for listening to Grey 17, a Babylon 5 podcast. You can find all the places to listen to and watch this podcast at anchor.fm/Grey17podcast or youtube.com at Grey17podcast. We want to hear from you, so join the conversation at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or Patreon. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review where you are listening to or watching this podcast. Grey 17 is not affiliated with, and the podcast has not been prepared, approved, or licensed by Warner Brothers or any other owners of the Babylon 5 copyright. All clips included in this podcast are the intellectual property of the respective copyright holders. They are included here for purpose of review, and no infringement is intended. The opening and closing themes are available from Falling Matter on YouTube.
And what's out there?
The rim,
And beyond that?
the truth.
And welcome back to Beyond the Rim, where we are going to discuss all of our newbies' questions and predictions. Again, for those who may be new, if you have not watched past Faces of the Enemy and do not want to get spoilers, this is the point where you should leave the show, because we are going to go through all of these questions and predictions, and there will be spoilers. So if you choose to stick around, don't come yell at us because of your decisions. So, our first question, when will we see Ivanova straight up Thunder Punch Garibaldi?
Yes, I definitely want to see that too. But unfortunately, she does get pretty mad about it. He's finally able to convince everybody that he was not at fault for the whole problem.
I don't think the two actually have another scene together.
Really?
Because when Ivanova leads the fleet towards Earth, she gets in that battle where the White Star's damaged and she's fatally wounded. Sheridan is back, but Garibaldi's still on Mars to help with that operation. I don't think the two actually, with the exception of Deconstruction of Falling Stars, which was already filmed, I don't think the two actually have another scene together in the series at this point.
Yeah, because we've got intersections in real time and between the darkness and the light before Endgame. What's Rising Star about?
Yeah, because that's Garibaldi goes and rescues
Oh,
Lisa in that one. So again, I
okay.
don't think the two actually have a scene together.
All right, that's when Ivanova is curled up in med lab after after the unfortunateness, which we won't speak of because I don't know if I can emotionally handle it yet. We'll see.
Oh, I'm still bringing up your little snafu from the
fuck
Claudia
you.
interview with our newbies. I've been
Fuck
waiting 3 goddamn seasons for that.
You are not bringing that up, or I
Oh,
quit,
yes.
sir. I'm just kidding.
Oh, yes, I am. What happens to Garibaldi? What does Garibaldi do now? And does he go off to save Lise or save Sheridan?
Are we allowing questions as vague as what happens to somebody? That's a little.
Yeah, that needs to be a little more
to
descriptive.
Sweep that one under the rug.
Things happen.
Yeah, well, he goes off to save Lise and then immediately is trying to save Sheridan. It doesn't take him real long to find Lise.
Mm-hmm. He'll get Sheridan first, and then with the help of the Rangers, we'll go rescue Lise.
Oh, is that in the wrong? Do I have it in the wrong order?
Yeah, because they will free Sheridan in Between the Darkness and the Light.
Okay.
And it's not until Rising Star that they free Garrett, that he goes and gets Lise, and he uses the Rangers to help him do it when that group there's a group that tries to ransom her.
Oh, you're right, because Lise isn't even in intersections in real time.
And he takes the Angla shock and, a little shock and awe and rescues Lise.
Yeah.
So was Edgar's wronged by a telepath, or does he have a telepath that is close to him? Perhaps Mr. Edgars needs to show us on the doll where the telepath hurt him.
Oh boy. Well, I don't think we ever get an answer to that.
No.
A lot of reaching here. Some fun ideas, but nothing that's confirmed.
I don't know. He didn't give me that vibe. He just he's not willing to give over control to, like he literally said word for word, a ruling class of telepaths. And given that there is going to be a telepath war at some point, and given the fact that Psychor is extremely dangerous, like I said during the episode, it's not totally without, understanding him being afraid of them. The act is his solution, and I'm calling it that for a reason, is unconscionable.
So was Lisa's son telepathic? Again, we get nothing to even hint at that. So where Emily comes up with some of these, I don't know.
Like the newbies seem to be, well, Emily seems to be grasping at straws here as far as like, yes, he showed a little bit of emotion and remorse about the horrible thing that he knew he was about to do. That's just what it is. Like he's every character in the show is well written because they're bad guys who don't think they're bad guys. They're good guys, and they think they're falling on their sword to do the thing that needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, he's a bad guy, but he's not a sadist.
Not a monster.
Yeah, he wouldn't have somebody in a room and just hurt them because he felt like it.
Not a monster, or at least he's aware that he's being the monster.
All right, so
yeah, trying to connect the thing with Lisa's son is just a reach to try to further explain, which is 0% hinted at in the show.
I mean, honestly, they needed to bring Lisa back into the show and do away with she had a husband and a kid earlier. Now she doesn't. Will this affect Clark's plan with Edgar's dead?
Clark's not going to have much of a chance for anything of his plans to come to fruition.
Yeah, scorched earth, gun to the head. That's going to end pretty damn quick.
Yep.
Does Delenn go off to save Sheridan?
No, she does not.
Yeah, because they don't get reunited till Rising Star when it's on Earth.
Right.
She will bring the fleet, though. She will bring the League of Non-Aligned Worlds with her.
Right.
Because they help take out the orbital weapons platforms.
Yes, which Clark was so interested in, the murder-suicide pact with the entire planet. Real sweetheart, that guy.
Wonderful guy.
Not unlike Cartesia.
Yeah.
Or a certain orange one that wants to end NATO alliances.
Oh, I knew you were going to go there. And if you didn't,
Not wrong.
If you didn't, I was going to.
Is Lita going to rejoin? If Lita rejoins Psychor, how is she helping Franklin with the frozen telepaths?
Well, she's Psychor adjacent-esque. She's not really back with Psychor. She's just off the rogue list, and she has to play by their rules, but she's not truly Psychor. They mention that. You can forget because she's wearing the gloves and she's doing the Psychor bit, but she's not really Psychor.
Yeah, she's back to doing commercial work, not deep state shadow government work.
Well, officially.
Yeah.
No. Showing up with the Mars Resistance might be a little bit off the commercial telepath role. Is Sheridan's father physically safe, and is he getting his meds?
I don't remember any references to David Sheridan after this. Do you?
He is in Rising Star.
Okay.
Because when they all get reunited on Earth, and Flat tells John, they started treating me real good when you showed up here.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
It's like once they realized that they were fucked, they got really nice.
It's the mom that they really don't even reference. Yeah. That's right.
Other than a quick, David says they never got to his mother.
Yeah, right.
So let's do our predictions here. The frozen telepaths are used to be telepathic hackers. Justin is fucking cheating. Nailed it.
Yeah, we said the last Beyond the Rim too. I mean, he just couldn't have gotten it more right. That's exact. But all of the evidence is there.
Yeah. Hidden shadow ships to be used with the telepaths against the Earth fleet. Emily is convinced the shadows left some ships behind.
Yeah, which is another interesting theory. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the same thing. It is an interesting theory.
Well,
it doesn't happen to be correct.
Yeah, and it doesn't. I mean, if you think about it, it doesn't make sense because it's not like the shadows. Like they left of their own volition to go follow the first one. It's not like they were like, we're gonna leave, but we have any loyalty to our followers back here, and we're gonna they don't have any stake in what happens. So they wouldn't have left anything to anybody.
Right.
Well, and
they don't
they
care.
even triggered Zaha Doom to explode when they went and checked. So yeah, we're gonna find their shadow tech around. I would even argue that you'd say that this virus that Edgar's came up with had to have some shadow influence behind it.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
For the genetic targeting of it. And we'll even see that later with the Drock plague that they were working on. We'll see that the shadows have done this type of bioengineering, but they destroyed Zaha Doom to keep their stuff from getting into enemy hands, even though they had left. So I could easily see that they have no capital ships or anything like that left. It's going to be just remnant tech here and there.
Plus, how easily would they have been able to figure out their tech? Probably not. And most importantly, if Sheridan is worried about the optics of having Bari or even just non-humans running the fleet, I don't think he's going to be real wild about bringing shadow ships into the mix.
Well, we are going to see Earth figured it out a little bit, because we've got those super Star Destroyers that are going to be coming up that have the shadowy black webbing and stuff around them, and shadow type weapons.
I just reread this question, and that the assertion was that it's Sheridan and the non-aligned worlds that would be using shadow tech. That is so bonkers.
Because Earth has it. Because we're going to see those kind of black, what is it, the Omega class Star Destroyers?
Yeah, which you bring up a good point. If the assertion, it made more sense. I thought the assertion was that Earth was going to roll out the shadow ships that had been left for them to play with, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense either when they have such an anti-alien agenda, and then they're like, oh well, these guys are, but and then like the Omega Destroyers come out that are all clearly shadowed up, but I mean, obviously, I don't think those were meant to be seen by anybody either.
So we have two Garibaldi predictions here. One is he goes back to B5, everything's cool, and he becomes security chief again. And one is no, he won't, and things won't go back to the way they were. There's a little bit of both here. So Garibaldi does kind of get back in with the command staff and the crew, but he won't be security chief again. He becomes the chief of intelligence for the Interstellar Alliance.
Yep.
That'll be coming in season 5.
And Scott made reference at one point to, things are never truly the same between Sheridan and Garibaldi again. I don't remember things being particularly tense, in season 5 between the two of them. And to the extent that anything was, it was over the stress of the new Interstellar Alliance. I don't remember things being super strained between the two of them, but perhaps I'm not remembering correctly.
It does, because remember, Garibaldi starts drinking again in season 5.
Oh, well,
and
right,
there's some issues that come from that cause
understood
with him and Sheridan.
Right, understood, but I don't. That has more to do with his drinking, doesn't it? Than holdover from this.
Yeah, it's not so much a holdover from this, but it is a different dynamic between the two of them.
Okay.
Come season 5, we do not really see, other than a brief start to season 5, we don't see them with that same tight relationship like they had earlier in season 3.
Okay.
Well, and I mean, I was going to say that I don't know that I've ever felt like Sheridan and Garibaldi best friends forever. Definitely not the way Sinclair and Garibaldi.
Right.
They've always had a much more professional level relationship.
Yeah, I think there's truth there too, for sure, that they weren't playing pool on a Saturday night in the officers' lounge, but at the same time they trusted each other, and to the extent that I don't think that trust has been completely obliterated by the end of this season. And the evidence for that, I would say, is the fact that Garibaldi becomes the head of intelligence. I mean, would he have put somebody in that particular position if he didn't feel like he could trust him?
Or any position, yeah.
Right.
He's given a seat at the table again, basically.
Right.
Okay, then we have Sheridan will be saved and Garibaldi will be the one to do it. He will be there with Lita and Franklin.
Right.
That's actually how he gets back in, because I don't think Bester knows that Lita's on Mars, or Franklin for that matter. So when Garibaldi gets captured by the Resistance and gets put before Franklin and Lita, that's the only thing that saves his ass. Otherwise, they probably would have killed him.
Right.
But he basically begs Lita to scan him, and Lita vouches that, Bester fucked him up.
Yeah, on a deep scan that could have easily caused Garibaldi's end, or at least some brain damage or something else. But yeah, that's right. I mean, Lita's the only one that could. So yet again, Justin's got the right answer.
Well, and you brought up a good point. We actually did kind of gloss over. I guess we didn't have much of a discussion about that Lita in the first half of the episode, but I think that's actually a good point you just brought up, Kevin, and the fact that scan could have killed Garibaldi later on, and we kind of got the I don't know, the backstory, the foreshadowing to that potential consequence in this episode. So once again, it's like these hidden details. Like that scene was not for nothing. It had several purpose in this episode.
Right. It's just going to take a while for it to come full circle for people to understand the reason behind it, like you're saying. Yeah, JMS doesn't do a ton of exhibition for no reason whatsoever. Usually he's writing with purpose.
And our last one is the Rebel fleet showing up at Earth will be satisfying.
Well, it would have been, except that Clark is a complete and total monster. It has a good ending.
I will say, I think it is kind of when they jump in, because you've got that line from Sheridan about we're here to place President Clark under arrest.
Yeah.
You just jump in and you basically got him going, yeah, fuck you, we're done.
Yeah, it's just the whole thing is also overshadowed by the awfulness that is Ivanova leaving the show and Marcus sacrificing himself for her, and then for nothing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, to determine what's satisfying and what's not, I would say your mileage will vary.
Yes.
Okay, I found the full quote from when they jump in about, this is not the voice of treason. These are your sons, your daughters, whose loyalties have never wavered, whose belief in this alliance has forced us to take extreme means for justice, for peace, for the future. We have come home. When the fleet shows up and has that message, I love that bit.
Okay. I'm sure it will be very satisfying, but losing Marcus is tough. And then losing Ivanova is even worse.
So do we have anything else we want to cover on this week's episode?
The only other thought that occurred to me as we were doing question, it really is a comment that belonged in the first half of the episode. Really appreciated as Bester is debriefing Garibaldi in the tube, and he learns about Eggers' plot, that even Bester is like, holy crap, the scope of their plan is surprising. The fact that they were going to wipe out every telepath, like it was way bigger than even he thought. And I was like, that was pretty cool. That's pretty cool to see, like, the bad guys admit a moment of like, well, we almost ate it there.
Well, Bester is a different type of bad guy. Not just that he's not totally bad, even though he's mostly bad, but the fact that he has the clearest of agendas, and it's borne out anytime he talks about his telepaths, in air quotes, because he sees every telepath as being his, with him as the true and rightful leader of the telepath movement, which is interesting to me that somewhat lower level Psycop could imagine himself to be the leader of all of them, but delusions of grandeur, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like he's really thinking himself much bigger than in reality he really is. He's and likewise, yeah. I guess a better way to say it was just the fact that he was seemingly impressed by the scope of his enemy's plan.
Yeah, and we talked about that earlier in the series, that the newbies kind of perceived him as a lot more powerful than he actually is, because that was really all they knew of the Psi-Corps or echelon of any sort. But he's a cog. He's not the motor.
All right, I think that is going to end it for us here this evening. Again, make sure to check us out next week as we continue our journey through season 4 of Babylon 5. And if you've liked this show, make sure to give us a like and subscribe on your podcast app of choice. Or if you are watching this on the YouTube, make sure to follow us and click notifications so that you know when we put out new episodes. Or we occasionally do live broadcasts, which, trust me, you do not want to miss what we do on those. So again, I have been Blake, and with me has been
Kevin
and Mike.
Peace out.
What's going on? You all look like a pock mirage just ate your cat.